They're not going to foul. The Heat will let it play out. It's over. At last, the long wait is over. After 47 years, the Denver Nuggets can finally call themselves NBA champions.
All right, hello everyone, and welcome to episode 6 of Basketball in the Mountains. I'm your host, Tyler King, and we're going to be once again talking about the Nuggets this week, as it seems like we found a nice schedule of talking about the NBA earlier in the week, and then talking some more college hoops getting into the weekend later in the week. But here on a Tuesday, very windy Tuesday here in the Mile High City, we've got our first ever repeat guest on Basketball in the Mountains, and it is my colleague over at the Denver Gazette, Vinny Benedetto. Vinny, thanks for hopping on today.
Absolutely. I'm honored to be the first repeat guest.
Yeah, we're a lot to talk about today. Obviously, Nuggets fans probably know injury news earlier today. Julian Strawther is going to be out for a couple weeks with a knee strain. Obviously, a decent blow to Denver's rotation right now. Vinny, do you expect it'll be the rest of the regular season, or do you feel like they're going to want to try to get him to ramp up before the start of the postseason, because it is kind of that weird timing now where first week of March, a month from now, you're kind of in the last week or two of the regular season. So do you feel like they're going to try to want to get him back as soon as they can once he's obviously fully healthy so he can kind of get ramped up to be a part of the postseason rotation?
Yeah, I think it would definitely be ideal for them to get him back for at least a few regular season games toward the end, just to see if he could get some kind of rhythm back. I don't know how much conditioning you lose over 4 weeks when you're a professional athlete, but I just feel like for a guy who's kind of tasked with, in the playoffs, I've been thinking his role is going to kind of, be what we've seen for most of this regular season, kind of be that microwave scorer off the bench, somebody who can provide some scoring for that second unit. So I think, ideally you'd like to get him some sort of some game experience in the final few games of the regular season.
Yeah, it sounds like Peyton Watson is also kind of on the way back from a similar injury that kept him out it's been about a month now that he's been out. So it sounds like that'll be a big boost to rotation, but it feels like maybe this is Jalen Pickett maybe getting a little bit more run, or do you expect maybe just more minutes for Christian Brown and Russell Westbrook? Although I don't know how many more minutes Christian Brown can play at this point after the other day in Boston, but maybe a little bit more for Russell Westbrook and maybe even more for Jamal Murray too, if that's at all possible.
Yeah, I think they've got to give Jalen Pickett some run here. I mean, I think he's earned it. I think he's really played pretty well, pretty consistently for the last few weeks now. And, this time of year, obviously the standings are what they are, and there's going to be a ton of movement over the next 6 weeks, it feels like. But it also feels like it's really important for this Nuggets team not to put too much on the guys they are going to rely on in the playoffs. So I think getting Jalen Pickett involved for as long as Julian Strawther is down is probably the smart play here.
All right, well, let's transition to kind of what I wanted to open the show with today. With obviously the Nuggets are coming back in Denver after a 2-2 road trip to the East Coast, playing all against Eastern Conference teams. We got to start with the Celtics game from Sunday afternoon. That's the 11 a.m. Mountain Time, 1 p.m. Eastern Time afternoon slot is always a weird one that the Western Conference teams never seem to do well in. But and the Nuggets kind of unsurprisingly fell down pretty big early in the game, down by as many as 20, I think, late in the first half. Both teams were shorthanded. No Aaron Gordon for the Nuggets, no Porzingis or Drew Holiday for Boston. It's just a really fascinating matchup to me because over the past 2+ seasons now, including this one, the third straight year, the Nuggets have probably been the best team in the West over that span, and the Celtics have been the best team in the East, and yet it hasn't been an NBA Finals matchup. I think it is one that people have wanted to see the last couple of years but haven't gotten, and would like to see again, would like to see if it happens this year. But it's just been a really fascinating matchup, especially now so that the Nuggets are really leaning into the no threes and the Celtics have leaned all the way into the threes. It's just a contrast of styles. Although the Nuggets have taken one more three than the Celtics in each of the 2 games they have played now this season. But Vinny, just kind of what was your big takeaway from the game? I don't know if there was much to take away just because both teams were down a couple rotation guys, but obviously Jamal Murray kind of leads a nice comeback in the second half, but the Celtics just seem to have too much there at the end at home.
Yeah, that is my main takeaway. If we want to zoom into one game and kind of extrapolate what it means for the Nuggets, it's that they're gonna go as Jamal Murray goes. They fall behind by 20. Um, Thanks to a really quiet first half from Jamal. And he scores 21 or 22 of his points in the second half, while also kind of being a playmaker and contributing on the glass. So I think that's kind of the number one takeaway is the Nuggets are, a championship contender when they get the good to great version of Jamal Murray. And when they get anything less, it's going to take, a Herculean effort from Nikola Jokic or maybe a hot shooting night from somebody else to kind of get this team over the top. But that second half from Jamal, I think, was kind of highlighted his importance to what the Nuggets are going to do this season.
Yeah, we talked about this a couple weeks ago with just how good he's been in 2025. You look at his February was just outstanding. He shot 52% from three in February, 52% from the field. He was up close to 25 points per game. Like, that was clearly the best version of Jamal Murray is what we saw in February. And that's what the Nuggets are going to need if they're going to continue to continue playing well and make a deep run in the postseason. But I also hesitate and try not to take away too much from one individual a game, but I do want to focus on one thing, and that is how much the Celtics were willing to let Christian Braun shoot the ball in the game, because that feels like as Christian Braun's role continues to grow throughout the season, and it seems like he has more than solidified that fifth starting spot at this point without he's played the last 4 or 6 weeks. Really since Russell Westbrook had first went down with that injury. Now that CB is fully entrenched back in the starting lineup, he had a career high 22 shot attempts, most on the team in the game against Boston. Him and Russ were a combined 4 of 16 from 3, 2 of 8 each. It just seems like that could be the real strategy for not just Boston if we get to a potential finals matchup like that, but any team could really lean into the make the non Nikola Jokic or the core four really beat you for the Nuggets, whoever the fifth guy is out there with those 4 guys. How did you think Christian responded to the Celtics defensive strategy, and how important do you feel like will it be for him to continue to be comfortable with that amount of shots? Maybe not that amount of shots, but consistently taking 10 plus shots a game over the next couple weeks here down the stretch of the regular season.
Yeah, I think it's been really interesting just because, Christian's shooting 36, I think, percent from three this season. And it feels like it's either been stretches of him being a 38 to 45% shooter, and then stretches of him being a 18 to 25% shooter. Yeah. So it's just depending on whatever 2 or 3 week stretch you want to look at, he's either, a knockdown guy who makes teams pay for that, or it's the smart strategy. And, I think a bunch of other teams are going to kind of copycat. But I think the encouraging part for CB is even though he took 8 threes, he was still getting his opportunities off cuts or getting out in transition. And I think that's kind of going to be that's got to be the foundation of his game and his productivity. And then anything he gives you from 3, I feel is an added bonus. But they need to take some of those threes. I think CB probably did a better job than Russ of making sure he was getting his offense from other places as opposed to strictly being a jump shooter. But that's one thing I think they're going to continue to see, and they're going to have to find out a better way to navigate it. Even when Aaron Gordon comes back, even though he's shooting, he's having a career year from 3, when he comes back, or even in when the playoffs, I feel like teams are still going to dare him to prove that he is, a legitimate 40% 3-point shooter when it really counts. So the whole kind of mucking up the middle, not letting Jamal get downhill, or forcing Joker to drop 40 on you feels like it's kind of going to be the play, and teams are going to, Christian and Russ have to be prepared to find ways to beat teams that are just daring them to chuck threes.
Yeah, the whole make Nikola Jokic be a scorer thing, I always thought was pretty silly, because he was a guy that consistently, even when he was scoring 30 plus points per game in the postseason during the finals run a couple of years ago, he was still getting triple doubles regularly. I just don't think, I think the Lakers strategy and JJ Redick being very clear recently of just limit his touches because he's the best player on planet Earth is a good one. And part of that means also trying to limit a guy like Michael Porter Jr., who had the least amount of shots of any starter on the Nuggets in the Celtics game, only took 9 shots, 6 threes. We talked about this a little bit too recently, but it feels like for MPJ, the team kind of goes as he does at this point right now. If you just look at his splits and wins and losses, he's averaging 20 points per game in wins, and he's averaging under 16 points per game in games they lose. And his 3-point shooting in wins is almost 45%, and in losses it's under 35. You just kind of see the corollary there. It just feels like the playoff success of the Nuggets right now is going to hinge on not just Jamal Murray, but how good Michael Porter Jr. is and how efficient he is scoring the ball as well.
Yeah, that streak of him flirting with 40 points feels like a very long time ago, and I don't think it's a coincidence that, I don't think Jamal was out there for a couple of those games. So when the Nuggets are closer to full strength, I think that is something they've kind of got to do a better job of finding a way to make sure Michael Porter Jr. is still a big part of the offense, and he's not. I understand the temptation when teams are mucking up the middle that, Michael becomes a floor spacer and probably one of the better floor spacers in the league at that, at least in terms of the gravity and the way he forces at least one defender to stick on the perimeter. But for much of the year, I thought the most encouraging part of Michael Porter Jr.'s game was his ability to kind of like I was talking about with Christian Brown. He was getting it off cuts, and Mike was doing more crashing the offensive glass and getting second chance points around the rim. So I think that's got to be a bigger part of his game moving forward. He can't just be a guy who's standing on at 3-point line waiting for catch and shoot opportunities. I think he's too talented of a scorer to kind of be reduced to that. So I think that is something the Nuggets, as they navigate this limit Joker's touches, take out or cut out driving passing lane defense. I think finding a way to make sure Michael Porter Jr. is a more consistent contributor would go a long way to finding that solution.
Yeah, we've seen him really diversify his ability to score the ball this year. I mean, you mentioned the offensive rebounding has been great. The putbacks. It seems like he's definitely a more willing cutter this season. I think if there's teams that are really going to stick a small player on him, you can get him in the post and even try to play a high-low game with him and Nikola and try to just have him lob it over the top, because he is the legit 6'10", 6'11" that is tough to guard for opposing teams when Aaron Gordon's also out there, and same for Nikola Jokic. It just really feels like they could do a better job of getting more involved early in games, because we have seen when Mike is struggling, it feels like he can disappear out there at times, which is the worst thing you want for a guy like MPJ, who isn't necessarily always bringing it on the defensive end as well, and his defensive intensity is often driven by how involved he is offensively as well. But one next thing I wanted to switch to was just kind of the stretch coming up here for Denver. 2 home games this week, 2 games they probably should win against Sacramento and Phoenix on Wednesday and Friday. The Nuggets are currently 3rd place in the West, actually a game behind the Lakers now in the loss column. I talked about that on the solo episode I did last week after the Lakers came to Denver, and just kind of how interesting it is that the Lakers were already kind of in a really good spot before Luka got there, and now that he's there, they've really kind of taken it to another level. But it just feels like now the Nuggets, especially in these home games, have to do everything they can to rack up wins. Like I said, especially at home against some of these winnable teams, because it is going to be a mad chase or race here for the 2 and 3 seeds, I feel like, down the stretch here.
Yeah, I mean, tomorrow night feels like it's a must win, just given the circumstances. They've had 2 days off now since Sunday's early tip off. So, that's probably as long of a break between games they're going to get. Domantas Sabonis is not going to play for Sacramento, I don't believe, with the hamstring strain. So that's one where it feels like that's just one you got to get this time of year. And then the same goes for Phoenix. I think it'd be, great for this team to have some momentum going to Oklahoma City for what will be probably not as ballyhooed back-to-back, given that the Thunder are going to run away with the 1 seed. But it'll be a fun 48 hours for the MVP discourse. So these two home games before they head to Oklahoma City feel like it's a good opportunity for the Nuggets to go 2-0 here.
Yeah, there will be plenty of MVP discourse while you're going to be there, right, in OKC for the 2 games. Yeah, so that'll be fun, and I just think it'll be a nice time to preview and look at. I mean, obviously the Nuggets won't be at full strength now that Julian Strawther's not out there, but if Aaron Gordon's back for those games, it feels like he should be good to go by that point, barring a setback or anything. But it will be interesting to just see now that Chet's back for OKC, just kind of looking at the matchup and a potential Western Conference Finals matchup that also we didn't get last season. That could have been those 2 teams each lost in the second round. But you mentioned just kind of the importance of the stretch here. I mean, like I said earlier, the Lakers are 1 game ahead now, and the Grizzlies are right there behind them, and the Rockets as well. I wouldn't be too worried about those teams as playoff teams, but they're still pretty darn good regular season teams that will likely. I really do think it's going to be a pretty strong chase here to get the 2 and 3 seeds, and just trying to avoid playing Oklahoma City in the second round. I think that's going to be the main goal of all those teams in the 2 through 5 range. And right now, you look at it, the Nuggets as the 3 seed, their first round matchup would be the Warriors, who have suddenly gotten out of the play-in race and are now in the 6th seed. We'll see if they can hold that, but they've looked really good with Jimmy Butler. I mean, no surprise there that's kind of worked out well for them, but it just really feels like it's the West playoffs are going to be as difficult as ever. I mean, the Nuggets had their challenge even in the first round last year against the Lakers. That was not by any means an easy series. And obviously we saw how much of a grind that 7-game second round series was against Minnesota. I mean, how much are you focusing on seeding at this point, or do you just really think it's all about trying to get these guys healthy and playing their best basketball going into April?
No, I'm with you. I think if you're the Nuggets, you have to have a healthy perspective in terms of not running guys into the ground, but I would put a lot of weight and emphasis on being 2 or 3. I'm not sure how much we'll see, this weekend or Sunday, Monday in the Nuggets Thunder matchup in terms of playoff scheming or how those 2 teams would, strategize against the other and plan to attack. But I think with Oklahoma City's bigs and their stable of perimeter defenders, I think that's going to be the toughest matchup for Denver and for probably anybody else in the Western Conference. I think it's very, very important that the Nuggets finish 2 or 3 here if they want to make a deep run.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting too, because the Nuggets have the 5th toughest schedule the rest of the way. Lakers are 4th. Oklahoma City is 10th. Now, Oklahoma City has the benefit of not playing themselves. That's always kind of the unique thing about looking at future schedules. And Memphis is in the top 10 as well. Golden State's 11th. Houston, I think, is down in the bottom 10, but that's also a younger team. It's going to be interesting to see how this all shakes out. I mean, just quickly before we move on to talking a little bit about the Suns and just kind of the state of everything in Phoenix, is there anything in particular you're looking forward to seeing in the 2 games against Oklahoma City, like any specific matchup or just anything that could lead to lending an eye of what could come in a potential postseason series?
Yeah, one thing I think that's really interesting that Thunder are doing is they're trying to figure out how Chet Holmgren and Isaiah Hartenstein can share the court together. It feels like for the first 50 games of the season, 50 of the 60 that have been played, one of those 2 guys have been out for the Thunder. And so it feels like that's one thing Oklahoma City is really trying to figure out before their playoff quest begins is what does it look like when those 2 guys are out there? And when those 2 guys are out there, I think you could see some stuff that will remind fans of what Minnesota did last year with, obviously Chet and Isaiah are not Cat and Rudy, and they all have their different strengths and weaknesses, but just from how they play Nikola Jokic standpoint. And that's kind of what I was getting at earlier, where I'm not sure how much Mark Dagnall will show in these 2 meetings if he has a healthy respect for the Nuggets. The Thunder don't need to win these games. If they split with the Nuggets and they keep all of their strategies secret until the playoffs. I think they should be just happy with that. But they do also need to get Holmgren and Hartenstein more minutes together to fully understand what they have in that pairing, sharing the court together. I'd love to see it against Denver. I'm not sure we will, but that would be one thing if the Thunder put it out there that would have my attention.
Yeah, the other thing that I'm always interested in is watching Cason Wallace really against any elite guard in the NBA, because he has turned himself into one of the better perimeter defenders already. That's just, I mean, there's plenty of reasons why Oklahoma City is having the season where they are, just a historic net rating and getting contributions from everybody. I mean, but Cason Wallace and his defensive abilities is really fun to watch, and I think it'll be fun to see him go against Jamal Murray. That feels like it would be kind of a one-on-one kind of matchup that Oklahoma City would focus heavily on in trying to limit Jamal. Aaron Wiggins is another guy that is really come on strong for Oklahoma City as well. So that's going to be interesting, as well as seeing who kind of gets the most out of their role players as well, whether it's Christian Brown or Russell Westbrook for the Nuggets, or guys like Cason Wallace and Aaron Wiggins, like I said, for Oklahoma City. So just going to be, I'm really looking forward to watching those two games next week. I agree with you. I don't think the OKC coaching staff will tip their hand too much about what kind of plans they would have for a potential postseason series, but it's always kind of fun. It's been fun the last couple of years to watch those two teams go at it. So moving forward here, just kind of I want to wrap up today talking a little bit about the Suns. Probably won't talk about them too much the rest of the way of the regular season until the off season comes around, but just continues to be, I don't think there's any other way really to describe it other than an embarrassing season for the Suns, because Kevin Durant used those words himself the other day after they lost another national television game against the Timberwolves, who swept them in the first round last season. The Suns are now 2-8 in their last 10 games, and it just do not look like a group that enjoys playing together. We've already gotten the rumors about from various people about Kevin Durant likely being gone this summer. We can talk about potential suitors there, but I mean, I'm sure you haven't watched them too much recently, Vinny, but you'll get to see them in person this week when Phoenix comes to town. I mean, just is there a worst vibes team in the league right now? Maybe Philly with the Joel Embiid stuff, but that's more depressing than infuriating, I would say, for fan bases.
Yeah, I mean, Dallas isn't. they got some bad today. That's got to be pretty bleak. But you look at Philly and you look at Dallas, and like a lot of things outside of the players' control went into those seasons not going so well. Like Phoenix, I'm sure has had, that has dealt with various injuries, but nothing to the extent of those two teams. And I thought Phoenix had a pretty good offseason last year. I thought getting Tyus Jones and Monte Morris, guys who could just facilitate and get Devin Booker and Kevin Durant the ball, and Brad Beal even, get them the ball where they wanted and let them kind of do their thing. I thought it would work out quite well, but it has been anything but. And I think their only path forward is probably, moving Kevin Durant this offseason and seeing what you can get for him.
Yeah, they even got off Nurkic recently. They got Nick Richards, who is a fine center. I like the Mason Plumlee addition in the offseason as well. Like, I was guilty of this too. Like, even their draft picks, like Ryan Dunn was a major success, and Oso Ighodaro as well. It seems like they hit everything except everything surrounding the 3 stars went well, but the 3 stars have not at all lived up to their billing, and especially Devin Booker, who a guy I've been a fan of for a long time, and I felt was one of the big winners of the Team USA gold medal. Like, his willingness to be just whatever that group needed to be, he looked as good as ever defensively, was still capable of scoring at all times. I mean, Durant also had a really good run there as well, kind of coming off the bench for that group. But Beal's not going anywhere. That's pretty clear. I mean, we can argue about if that is still the worst contract in the league, but it's definitely top 3. The Joel Embiid extension now with the murky injury stuff is admittedly not great. And they seem to be Phoenix does seem to be unwilling to part with Devin Booker, even though that's probably we talked about this after the trade deadline about how that's definitely their easiest get out of jail free card. And I think Houston would be really eager to give all of the Phoenix's picks back to them in a potential Booker trade. But it seems like they're going to try to rebuild on the fly by getting rid of Durant this summer. Just some potential shooters that I had listed. Houston, I think, would still be one of them, if even though they would obviously prefer Devin Booker, and it wouldn't be as much of a haul for Phoenix in any of these trades. It wouldn't be as much of a haul for Durant, who I think is entering the final year of his contract next season. Than you would get for a guy like Booker, who's just entering his prime. But Miami and Minnesota were the other two that I had written down here. Do either of those interest you at all? And just kind of the packages and picks you could get back and trying to salvage whatever they are trying to salvage here in the back half of the 2020s in Phoenix?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, if I was Minnesota has a couple guys, but it's a matter of who they're willing to part with.
You're probably getting Julius Randle back, which is not ideal.
Yeah. None of those, like, there's nobody in Minnesota or Miami who like is jumping off the page at me as like that's a intriguing piece to get back. I think you look at a team like Houston and I would rather have one or two or a handful of Houston's young guys and get picks back or whatever you can get out of
like Cam Whitmore or Reed Shepherd and like a pick or two, like kind of something like that structure to start off. Yeah,
that feels better to me than
or maybe Houston will give you your first round pick back on draft night, because Houston has Phoenix picked this season, and right now it's 11th. The Suns have the 11th best odds, so we'll see what that happens. But yeah, that's just tough situation.
Yeah, they're going to have to make some hard decisions, and at this point, Durant has, I think, he's set to make 50-some million next year, and then there's no player or team option after that. So it is probably one of those deals where you do have to give Durant some say in the trade. Otherwise, if you're a team like Minnesota and you have no guarantee that Durant is going to sign there, then it's like, what are we willing to give up for a 1-year rental? It's going to be interesting down in Phoenix. It was a fun little rivalry between the Nuggets and Suns while it lasted.
Yeah, those interesting postseason series that weren't as competitive maybe as we had hoped in either direction. But yeah, I mean, the Suns do have a first round pick this year. It will probably be the last pick in the first round because it is the Cavs pick, and maybe it's going to be it's going to be 29 or 30. And it is a good draft class, so you kind of have, but that is a nice something for a nice little something for the Suns to try to boost forward if they can hit on that pick, whether it's a young player that you can kind of take a swing on, or an established college player that you can kind of immediately plug and play. Like right now, I'm just looking at a mock draft, has Alex Caravan from UConn, an older player. I mean, he's a fine player, but Neat Clippard, a couple picks down, maybe would be an interesting guy for Phoenix. I know you and I are rooting for Neat in his NBA endeavors after this season. But yeah, I mean, just wanted to hit on Phoenix really quick, because I thought the Durant comments after the Minnesota game the other day were pretty telling on where he's at and where he feels like the team is at. And they obviously will be in Denver on Friday night, and probably going to be a nice little boost for the Nuggets to play a team like that. So,
yeah, I was down there in Phoenix the last time they played, and it wasn't a full strength Phoenix squad, but it's bleak times down there, man. they are getting the Bol Bol experience, which
that's true.
Someone who has covered Bol Bol, like when it's good, it is legitimately fun to watch. So silver linings, I guess.
Yeah, I was watching the game the other night, and when he gets the ball, and if he's a little bit open, he's shooting it, man. He does not lack confidence, which I'm sure you remember from watching him on the Nuggets as well.
He'll throw a behind back pass. He'll try stuff. In soccer, there's a phrase that I won't say here, but it's the equivalent of he tries stuff. And I appreciate somebody willing to try something maybe a little ridiculous.
All right, that'll do it from Vinny and I here talking about the NBA, just kind of previewing the week ahead before signing off here. It is Tuesday, and I will be up at CSU tonight for Colorado State Senior Night against San Jose State, their last home game of the regular season. They end the regular season at Boise State on Friday, and they are currently in second place in the Mountain West. And looks like if as long as they win tonight, they'll have a good shot of maintaining that spot. Heading into the Mountain West tournament, where they're going to be likely trying to steal an NCAA tournament bid because they're playing about as good as any mid-major in the country right now. But the resume is not on their side, so they're still going to be beholden to trying to steal a bid in Vegas. And then just another game, a couple other games tonight. BYU at Iowa State is suddenly a really, really massive game, which will be important for deciding who gets the final double bye spot in the Big 12 tournament, which begins next week in Kansas City. Wouldn't pick against Iowa State at home, but stranger things have happened this season in BYU, as we talked about last week on the podcast with Sean Walker. Has been playing really, really good ball lately and seems to be finding their stride at the right time. And then New Mexico is at Nevada tonight. It's probably the last chance for New Mexico to slip up if the Rams have any hope of trying to get a share of the regular season Mountain West Championship. They are a game behind New Mexico right now, but New Mexico does have the tiebreaker after winning both regular season games against CSU. So something to watch there tonight. And then Colorado at Texas Tech on Wednesday. Probably not going to be another fun experience for the Buffs playing against a really good Red Raiders team, but they will wrap up the regular season then on Saturday afternoon, and I'll be there for that against TCU at home at the senior day for the Buffs. So, and one last thing I wanted to mention before signing off today is just shout out to Northern Colorado. The Bears won the Big Sky regular season championship, clinched that on the road last night. Steve Smiley is a really good coach up there in Greeley. It's still always going to come down to winning the Big Sky tournament, which UNC has not done yet. But they've got a good a shot as they've ever had to get to the NCAA tournament, which they would be likely the only team from the state of Colorado to make the tournament if they're able to win the Big Sky, unless, like I said, CSU wins the Mountain West tournament. But yeah, so thanks to Vinny for coming on today. Hope everybody enjoyed the Nuggets and Suns talk. Hopefully have another episode up later this week talking some more college basketball leading into the weekend. But just a reminder to rate, review, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, Spotify, Apple, or if you prefer to watch on YouTube as well. I appreciate that. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, comment, let me know what you think. And yeah, once again, thanks everybody for listening, and have a good day.